Alright, so coming off at the end of the previous episode, we saw that this mysterious woman had found Denji after he had defeated the zombie devil, and it's because she was coincidentally looking for the zombie devil at the same time. And in this episode, it's revealed that her name is Makima, and she's a devil hunter from the public safety. And after finding Denji, she realized that he was definitely a special case and had some potential, so she decided to take him in and make him a potential devil hunter as well. But we find out that she's a little more sinister than what was originally led on, because in this opening sequence in the back of the car here, she's like, I expect yes or woof for answers. I don't need a dog that says no. And of course, Denji's a little apprehensive to this, being treated like a dog, but at the same time, he's kind of on board because, you know, he really likes Makima, as we'll come to find out. So then Makima agrees to buy Denji some food because, you know, he's hungry and he doesn't have any money. And because of this, Denji falls even more for Makima because he's like, all my life, people have avoided me, saying I'm filthy and smell bad, and no one's ever really been nice to him before, especially a girl that looks this good. So this is important because, you know, Denji falling for Makima and becoming more and more subservient to her is kind of like one of the core aspects of this series. But going more into that, at the end of their meal, Denji asks Makima, like, what type of guys do you like? She's like, I like the Denji type of guy. And that's interesting, right? Because it's like, oh, does Makima like Denji? Because, you know, earlier she was like literally treating him like a dog. So it's like, does she genuinely like him? Or does she want to treat the people that she likes as if they are animals? Or does she just see Denji as a valuable asset to her? So she'll just try to manipulate him in any way that she can. We'll have to see. But like I said, it's one of the more interesting aspects going forward into this series. But anyway, they eventually show up at the Tokyo headquarters of the, you know, public safety devil hunters. And here Denji gets his iconic uniform, which is like a white button-up shirt with his sleeves rolled up and a black tie. But also in this sequence, we're getting introduced to his partner, who is Aki Hayakawa. And this is a pretty awesome and important character. And I suppose he's also the deuteragonist of this series as well. And it turns out that he started 3 years before Denji, and that Denji is going to be shadowing him today, which means like he's going to be working beside him, but not really doing too much hands-on, kind of just observing. And once they're out in public, Denji starts asking Aki, like, hey, does Makima have a boyfriend? And this kind of triggers Aki, and he pulls Denji into like this alleyway and just starts beating him up. But he's not doing this because he's like necessarily angry at Denji or wants to beat him up, but he's doing this for his own good. Because he's like, hey, you need to quit this job, and I'm actually being nice here. People who start this job without thinking it through end up dead. I've had colleagues who got into devil hunting just for the payday, and it got them all killed by devils. The survivors are the ones with real motivation. So the whole real motivation aspect is also really important and a really unique aspect of this series as well. And obviously motivations are like a big part of MCs in these particular kind of series for sure. And as we've come to know of Denji in the first episode, he's not traditional in any sense of that. His main motivation is essentially scoring with a girl, but outside of that, kind of just living how he wants to and enjoying the hedonistic aspects of life, I suppose. And Denji simply asking Aki, like, hey, does Makima have a boyfriend? Makes him realize, like, oh, hey, he's not being serious. He doesn't have real motivation here. He's going to wind up getting killed, and Aki doesn't want that. He doesn't want just Denji to die for nothing because he just sees him as a stupid kid. But Denji's motivations, while aren't traditional, are very real, and he has very real conviction tied to them, just like anybody else with traditional ones would. And he gets up and he knees Aki in the crotch and then just kicks him there multiple times. And he says like he always aims for that area when he's fighting a guy. Like, yeah, like I've been saying, Denji is not the traditional MC here, and there's gonna surely be some growing pains, not only for him as a character and getting adjusted to the audience, but also with the other characters in the series as well. And he's like, I really didn't think it through when I started devil hunting, but if I get to keep up this kind of life, I don't care if it kills me. You know, in reference to having a good meal paid for him and him getting to be around Makima. And this is obviously important to him because we saw the crappy life that Denji was living in the previous episode, or, you know, the majority of his life. Like, his childhood was essentially robbed from him by the Yakuza, and his father's dead. So they wind up getting into another scuffle, and Denji hits him in the crotch again, and they go back to headquarters and arrive in front of Makima, and Denji's like, the big guy's testicles were attacked by the nut devil, man. Great line. And then Makima's like, are you guys going to be able to get along because you're going to be joining Aki's unit here? And Aki's unit is kind of special because it's experimental, as we'll come to find out that it's not like the typical units in the devil hunters. So they can do things like having Denji, who is like this human devil hybrid thing, in that unit. But then Aki asks, like, what exactly is Denji? And Makima says that Denji's a human but can also transform into a devil. And Aki says, I always figured those stories were baseless rumors. So that's interesting, right? Kind of implies that this case isn't unique to Denji. And it also goes back to earlier on in the episode. I'm referring to what happened between Denji and Pochita, she says there's not a lot of precedent for your condition, even from a historical perspective. It doesn't even have a name. So like this is a thing, but it's just very, very uncommon. And it very likely means that there are other individuals out there like Denji. And if you paid attention close enough to the intro, you can kind of see where things are headed. But then it's also revealed that Denji is kind of tied to the public safety from now on. Like considering that he is a human, but also a devil at the same time. And because of that, he's going to have to stay with them until he dies, essentially. And that if he goes rogue or runs away or anything, then he'll, be executed. So then after this, we find out that Denji is going to be living with Aki so that he can like keep tabs on him, but also to keep him in check because, he also is a devil at the same time, as we established. And then when we get to Denji and Aki's apartment, we just see him going crazy with like the jam on his toast and everything and making a complete mess. But this also goes back to what he talked about with Pochita in the first episode about how, some people put jam on their toast and how that was kind of like something that was completely out of his grasp. But now, of course, it's not, and he's fully enjoying it, but he's also making a lot of noise and spending a lot of time in the bath, like falling asleep on the toilet, using all of the toilet paper. He's just being like a really awful roommate at this point. And it goes back to like what I was saying, Denji has a lot of growing pains to go through. So after this, they wind up going to like their first devil case, and it turns out that there's this fiend that's holed up in this room in this house. And it turns out that a fiend is what happens when a devil possesses like the dead body of a human. And this also goes back to the first episode because it was kind of alluded to that this was a thing, because Denji was talking to Pochita in this flashback and he was like, hey, I heard that some devils can take over people's bodies when they die. So if I die, I want you to do that to me. But as we found out, Pochita did something entirely different and like became his heart and gave him the Chainsaw Devil powers rather than just completely possessing his body. As we see here with this insect thing, I don't think it's revealed what exact devil this thing is, but it's some kind of insect devil, and it's possessed this dead guy's body and became this fiend that we see. Aki requests that Denji like goes into Chainsaw Man mode and like hacks him up, but instead Denji just cleanly takes off his head with his axe. And he says, it's because Denji himself could have wound up like this fiend here, if Pochita didn't become his heart and just took over his body. So he kind of wanted to make it painless for him. And this also triggers Aki. And he's like, fiends are just like any other devil. You got to drop the sympathy when you're hunting them. My entire family was killed by a devil right in front of me. So that's important backstory to Aki here, giving us insight into his own individual motivation. Like he has become a devil hunter because his family was killed by a devil. So this is like all about revenge for him. And then he also says, I've had drinks with the cops down there. They're risking their lives to protect their wives and kids. So that's like their motivation. And this goes back to what he was talking about with Denji in the alleyway, how the ones with real motivations are the ones that survive. And he's like, what are you trying to do? Become friends with the devils here? And Denji's like, if there's a devil I could be friends with, then yeah, I would, because I don't have any friends. And this kind of sparks something different in Aki here, because he's like angry, of course, but at the same time, he's kind of sympathizing with Denji because he's starting to understand better why Denji is the way that he is. He's like, oh, you never had friends. It's been so bad for you that you'd even befriend a devil. But then we also get more insight into hedonistic Denji here, because he's like, aside from just taking it easy on the fiend, taking his head off in one clean blow, he didn't want to make a complete mess with the chainsaw stuff because he wanted to protect the adult magazines here. And then we get a little more insight into some of his motivations here, because we found out that he is living the dream that he's wanted. He gets to bathe every day, eat good food, and he gets to hang around a hot chick in Makima, which goes into what Pochita ultimately wanted, because Pochita was like, show me your dreams and in exchange I'll give you my power. So he's doing this not only for himself but also for Pochita, and he's like, well, how do I go further? And then he thinks that his ultimate overall goal of scoring with a chick is not attainable at this moment, but he can settle for something before that, and it's touching someone's chest. Yep, we already established this is who Denji is, not the traditional MC. So yeah, going forward, that's like his next big goal in the series here, is to touch someone's chest. So then they meet back up at headquarters with Makima, and we're introduced to their other partner, another member of Aki's special unit here, and it turns out that she's a fiend. Remember, a fiend is a devil that possessed the dead body of a person, and her name is Power. And immediately we can see that she's like pompous, arrogant, and loud. But she's also a special case because, as Makima puts it, she's highly rational, and she has potential to just be like a straight up devil hunter despite being a devil herself. And we don't find out exactly what type of devil she is immediately, but we can kind of put two and two together here, because later on we see her and Denji like on this rooftop patrolling for like random devil incidents and whatnot, and she hits him on the back of the head and she's like, provide me with something to kill immediately, I'm starved for blood. And we found out in the previous episode that like if a devil consumes blood, it like heals them. But I don't know if they necessarily want it for like sustenance yet, but they for sure are interested in blood as far as we know. But then eventually she's like, I smell blood. And it turns out that the sea cucumber devil is like right beneath them on the street below. And then immediately like Power jumps off the roof, and out of her wrist, like this blood comes out and forms like this giant mallet, and she winds up taking out the sea cucumber devil in like one strike. So considering all of the blood stuff here and the red horns on her head, we could just assume that she's probably blood devil, right? Or the blood fiend now, since she's the blood devil that possessed the dead body of a human. And yeah, pretty powerful too, since she's taking this thing out in one strike. But yeah, that's where the episode ends. And it just gets crazier from here on out. Let me know what you thought about this episode in the comments, guys. Where do you think things are headed? And if you liked the video, please leave it a like and please subscribe if you haven't already. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.